Hey everyone, welcome to this video. Today we are going to learn Python. So Python is a programming language and it is used to do many things like create websites, build games, etc. And also there are many reasons as to why should you learn Python. Number one, Python is very easy. And number two, Python is very powerful. So using Python you can do a lot of things with less effort. And Python is also very popular nowadays. So that's why we should learn Python. And as you can see here, please like the video and subscribe the channel. And let's start. So I am inside my PyCharm. So PyCharm is basically a code editor. It is a code editor for writing codes in many languages. But today we are going to use it for writing Python code. So I will put the link for Python download in the description. And let's start. So first of all, we need to create a Python file in which we are going to write all the code. And for that, I will go to this Python project, this project I've created, and I will click on new Python file, and then I will name it. So let's say main.py, main.py. This is our file, and in this file, I'm going to write all the Python code. So you know that a program has basically three things. One is to get the input from the user. Second is to process the input, and third is to display the output. Firstly, we are going to understand how to display output, and we do that using print. So print is basically a function, or I can say that a function is some kind of pre-written code which you can run to do many things. So I'm calling this function, and inside this brackets, these curly brackets, I can put strings. So this is called string. Inside the double quotes, whatever I will write is called string. And let's say hello world. And to run my program, I have a run button over here, a small run button, and I will click on it. You can see hello world. So this is our output window. In this window, we are going to display all the output. So let's try something else. Let's try printing a number 10. So let's run the code, and you can see firstly it is printing hello world, and then it is printing 10. Isn't it amazing? So always remember that print is a function which is a pre-written code, and you can directly call it to display output. And over here you can see I have written 10, and if I want to do some addition or subtraction, I can do that. For example, 10 plus 1, it should be 11, and yeah, it is 11. You can see hello world and then 11. And let's try division. 10 divided by 2, and if I run hello world and 5.0, so you can see we can display output in any form, like a message or a number. Let's try doing multiplication. So 10 into 2, and we do that by using a star sign, this star sign, and I will run it hello world and then 20. Perfect. So that was about the print statements. Now let's look at variables. So variables are used to store data. So let me write in a comment over here. Variables are used to store data. So what is a comment? A comment is basically a message which we are not, which is basically not necessary. So this message is not necessary for the Python, but it is necessary for us. So we leave comments for us or for any other programmer for help. So next time, if you look at this code and you look at variables and you forgot what are variables, then you can just read this command to remember it. Perfect. It is basically something that the Python does not care about. You can write anything over here, but remember, when you're not writing a command, always follow the syntax or the rules of a language. Perfect. So now how do we declare variables? For example, if I want to declare a variable called number, I will basically write the name number, and then I will say equals to the value of it. Let's say it is 10. So my number variable is 10. If I try to print this number, then I will get 10. But always remember, if I write it in double quotes, then it will not display 10, rather it will display simple number, because string is like the literal information. If we are not writing it in string, then it will firstly check for if a variable exists or not. But if it is written in a string, then it will just display the number. I mean, it will display the text. Perfect. So now let's say I have, this is number 1, and I declare another variable number 2, and that is 20. So now let's print some calculations. So if I want to print the addition of these two numbers, let's try number 1 plus number 2. Let's try. Okay, let me write all the operators. This is addition, this is multiplication, this is division, and then this will be subtraction. And now you can see we are getting the output. So 10 plus 20, 30. 10 multiplied by 20, 200. 10 divided by 20, 0.5. And 10 minus 20 is minus 10. There is also another operator. For example, if I want to know the square of a number, for example, if I have number 1 and I want to know the square of it or cube of it, so I can basically write number 1 double times this star time. I will write this star 2 times, and after that I will write whether I want to do the square or cube. So for example, if I want to do the square, then I will put 2 and run the program, and you can see we are getting the 10 square as 100. Let's try with number 2. We are getting 400. You can try it with 3, 4, 5 and check if the results are perfect or not, and I will move forward. So now I want to know whether number 1 is greater than number 2 or not. So for that, I will say number 1 equals to number 2, or rather, firstly I am going to write a program that will check whether number 1 is equals to number 2 or not, and after that we will try to see that if it is greater or less than number 2. Perfect. So how to check if number 1 is equals to number 2? We know that we have these two variables, number 1 and number 2. So now we can use some conditional operators which are used to basically compare two quantities. So we have number 1 quantity, and here we have number 2 quantity, and we want to compare if these are equal or not. So I can use this equal operator, equal operator, which means check if number 1 equals to number 2 or not, and if number 1 equals to number 2, then it will display true, otherwise it will display false. Let's try. So now number 1 and number 2 are not equal, and here we are getting false. Perfect. But the moment I change this to 20, then these both numbers are equal and it will display true. You can see. So now if I change this equals to this not equals to sign, which is basically this exclamatory mark and then equals to, this means not equals to. So now if number 1 is not equals to 20, I mean number 1 is not equals to number 2, then it will say true, otherwise it will say false. So let's try. It should display false now, and we are getting false. Now we also have some operators to check if number 1 is greater than number 2 or not. So for that I can basically use this greater sign operator. If number 1 is greater than number 2, it will display true, otherwise false. So at this time I will change 20, it to 10, And now number 1 is less than number 2, so we should probably get false. And that's the case. But the moment I change this to 30, then it becomes greater than number 2, and my output will be true. It's so simple. Now, see, because I am a programmer, I know that this true is basically saying that number 1 is greater than number 2. But let's say someone who does not know about programming watches this. So how will he know whether number 1 is greater than number 2 or not? For that, we need to display some kind messages or understandable messages. For that, we can use if statements. So if number 1 is greater than number 2, we can display some message. Otherwise, else we can display another message. For example, if number 1 is greater than number 2, and I have to write the semicolon, and after that with an indentation. So this is, so spaces are called indentation. So if I, for example, I say if number 1 is greater than number 2, and then I leave 4 spaces over here, so then it is called indentation, which helps us to understand which lines are part of a statement. So for example, the lines I'm going to write over here will be part of this if statement. So I have to write it with an indentation of 4 spaces. So always remember that. By the way, PyCharm is going to do that automatically for you. So if number 1 is greater than number 2, we can display a simple output like number 1 is greater. And if that's not the case, for that I write else. So be sure to jump out of this indentation. And if number 1 is not equal to number 2, if number 1 is not greater than number 2, then I can say number 2 is greater. Let's try. So in our case, number 1 is 30, while number 2 is 20. So that's why number 1 is greater. You can see. And if I change this to 40, then it should say number 2 is greater. And that's exactly the case. So these were if else statements. But what if they are both the same? Let's try. Still we are getting number 2 is greater, because since number 1 is not greater than number 2, both number are equal. So that's why number 1 is not greater than number 2. Then that's why it is not going to display this message. So it will jump to the else block and it will display this message. But it is probably wrong, because number 2 is neither greater. Both are of equal. So that's why I need to think of another logic. And for that I can add some more if statements. Actually, I can add elif statement. So if number 1 is greater than number 2, then this will happen. And here I will write else if. So elif is word for else if. Elif number 2 is greater than number 1. Then I will write number 2 is greater else. So the moment it is jumping to the else block, it means that neither number 1 is greater nor number 2 is greater. So we can safely print that both are equal. Right? So we can safely print it. Let's try. So now it should display both are equal because both are 40. Perfect. Let's try with 50. Now number 1 is greater. If I change this to 60, number 2 is greater. But is it holding for minus signs? So if I write here minus 60, it should display number 1 is greater. Perfect. So minus signs are also working. Let's move forward. Now our goal is to take input. So how do we take input? Now I want to take the input for number one value and number two value. For that we have, just like we have a function print, we have a function called input. And in this input, we are going to display the message that is going to appear, which will display type the like value of this variable. Let me show you how. Type value of number one. So this means it will ask us, it will ask us for the input and it will display this message. And here I will type the value for number two. If you don't understand this, don't worry. The moment I show it to you, you will understand. So now let me run the code. So you can see here, the program is asking type the value of number one, and I will do that. Let's say 15. I will type the value of number two. Let's say 16. And we are getting number two is greater. And we are getting number two is greater. Let's try with 17. And now this time I will write a value less than 17. So 16. Now number one is greater. Perfect. So we are getting the desired output, which is great. And I can delete these lines. So now I'm going to show you about errors. Let's say I write here print, but okay, I'm going to leave a message over here, hello. But now I'm going to delete this curly brackets from here and I try to run it. You can see here I'm getting type of error called syntax error. So syntax error occur when we don't obey the rules of a programming language. So in this case, we are not writing the closed parenthesis for this. That's the reason why we are getting this kind of syntax error. Okay, so now I will go back to my previous case, and over here you know that for number one and number two values in input we are expecting a number. But what if I put a string over here? So now I try to put a string. Okay, so I will say hello, and over here I will write like world. So let me write the first syntax error. Syntax error. Now for the next error I will try to divide some number, let's say 10 by 0. So you know that division by 0 is not defined, so we should probably get an error. And here you go. So we are getting a zero division error. So I can also write it over here just for you. Perfect. Now you know that when we are adding or subtracting some values, we will probably get a number. So for example, here we are trying 10 by 0, so we are getting number. But what if I try to divide a number by a string? So 10 by hello, let's see. So we are going to get a type error, I know that. And that's the case. You can say type error. So type error occur when we put the data types in the wrong place. So these both are different data types and division of data types is not possible. But now let me show you an interesting thing. Here I have tried 10 plus hello and it is again showing a type error because we can't add, subtract, divide or multiply two values of different data types. So I will write type error over here. But now I will show you something interesting. Actually, if I try to multiply hello by a number, then I will not get error. Rather, I will get this hello hello because it duplicates this hello and add it at the end of this string. So hello hello. If I write it 3 times or 4 times, it will say hello 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 like this. And also I can add 2 strings. So hello world, let's say, and if I click on this, I will get hello world. So but now you notice that when I write hello and world, hello and plus world, then we are getting hello world, but there is no space in between. So how do we get the space? There are 2 options. Rather you can either you can go here and type space, or there is an easier option. Instead of doing plus, you can write comma over here. So it will automatically put the space. You can see like this. Isn't it amazing? And another thing I want to show you about print. So at the next line, if I try to say another message like like then if I run it, I will get the like message on another line. So if you want to get the same message on the same line, I can type another comma and I can say and equals to. So these are basically parameters. So this is first parameter, this is second parameter, and this is third parameter. So end will be nothing. So it means, let me show you. Now we are getting like on the same line. You can see. If I type a space over here, then we will get a space like this. So perfect. Now I want to show you what happens when you don't put indentation. So for example, I will go to my previous example. Okay, so just I will leave it like this, 60 and 60 10. Okay, and now I am going to delete this indentation for these spaces. 1 minute, like this. Now if I try to run it, we are getting an indentation error. So this is the fourth type of error, indentation error. So that's why these indentations are really 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 important. Another error is a logic error. So for example, if I mistype this for a less than sign, then even if the number one is, if I make it to 70, even if the number one is greater than 60, we will get both are equal. So these kind of errors are called logical errors. So basically in these kind of errors, there is mistake in our logic or in our thinking. So that's it for the video. Thanks for watching the video up to this point. Please like the channel and subscribe. Okay, I got it wrong. Please like the video and subscribe the channel. Bye bye.